I refused to cover up my dad's crime, and finally broke free. I grew up believing that family was supposed to be the one thing you could always count on. My father, Robert Callahan, used to tell me that no matter how bad things got, we'd always have each other. Funny how words can age like milk. I was born and raised in a small town in northern Ohio. My mom died when I was 9 after a long battle with lung cancer. After that, it was just dad and me for a while, and to be honest, he wasn't the worst father back then. We'd watch baseball together, fix old cars in the garage, and sometimes drive to the lake just to talk about nothing. I thought that was love. I thought that was family. But everything changed when Dad met Sandra. She was younger than him by nearly 15 years, with bleached blonde hair, a sharp voice, and a smile that never reached her eyes. She worked at a real estate office and knew exactly how to sell herself, to clients, to my father, to anyone who would listen. Within 6 months, they were married. Within a year, she gave birth to Evan, my half-brother. I was 14 when Evan was born. Sandra made it very clear from day one that I wasn't her child, and therefore, not her responsibility. She treated me like some unwanted guest who refused to leave the house. And my father? He just let her. At first, I tried to play the good son. I'd help with chores, take care of the baby when they were tired, do everything I could to be useful. But Sandra always found something to complain about: how I walked too loudly, how my clothes weren't folded properly, how my grades weren't up to her standard. She even started telling my dad that I was disrespectful and lazy. It didn't take long for him to start believing her. By the time I turned 16, things were unbearable. Dad stopped talking to me unless it was to criticize something. Sandra's word became law in our home. And Evan, well, he was the golden child. He could do no wrong. If he broke something, it was my fault for not watching him. If he lied, it was because I set a bad example. It was like living in a courtroom where the verdict was already decided before I even spoke. When I graduated high school, I was ready to get out. I worked 2 part-time jobs, saved every penny, and moved to Columbus for college. I thought distance would fix things, that maybe once I was gone, my dad would see how much I tried. But the calls never came. The messages never came, and I was too stubborn to be the first one to reach out. Years passed like that, silence between us growing thicker than blood. Then, one day, I got a call from my aunt, my dad's older sister. She told me Evan was in high school now, that Dad had bought him a car for his 16th birthday. I laughed, not because I was jealous, but because it confirmed everything I already knew. I had been replaced. Fast forward to last year. I'm 28 now. I have a decent job as a project coordinator at a construction firm. I rent a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it's mine, peaceful, quiet, stable. I hadn't heard from my father in years. Then one morning, I woke up to a message on Facebook from a profile I didn't recognize. It was Evan. "Hey, this is kind of weird, but Dad's in trouble. He told me not to message you, but I don't know what else to do." My heart dropped. I didn't know whether to laugh or delete the message. After all this time, after being treated like garbage, now they suddenly remembered I existed? I typed back a simple, "What happened?" A few minutes later, Evan replied. He hit someone with his car. It was late, and he panicked. The guy didn't die, but he's in the hospital. Dad said if anyone finds out he was drinking that night, he'll lose everything. He wants you to help him out. Help. That word burned in my mind like acid. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, staring at the message. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to close my laptop and pretend I never saw it. But another part, the part that still craved my father's approval, wanted to know the truth. So, I drove back to my hometown for the first time in nearly a decade. When I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, I barely recognized it. The once white paint had peeled off, the yard was overgrown, and there was an old blue Ford sitting out front, dented on the side. He opened the door before I could even knock. "Michael?" he said, voice rough and uncertain. I hadn't heard that voice in years. "Yeah," I replied coldly. "Evan said you wanted to see me." He looked older, smaller somehow. The man who once towered over me now looked frail, like the weight of his choices had finally caught up. We sat in the living room, awkward silence stretching between us until he finally spoke. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "I didn't see the guy. He just ran out. It wasn't my fault." But then he hesitated, the way guilty people do. "I might have had a few drinks," he admitted. "The cops don't know yet. But if they find out, it's over for me, Mike. I could lose my license, my business, everything. I just need you to help me out." "Help." I thought I misheard him. "Take the blame?" I repeated, my voice sharper than I intended. Dad leaned forward, rubbing his forehead. You don't understand. You're not tied to this town. Nobody would suspect you. It would just be a fine, maybe some community service. You've always been good at handling things. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. You want me to confess to a hit and run you committed while drunk? You think that's handling things? He sighed, avoiding eye contact. Michael, I made one mistake. Don't make this harder than it has to be. That line, don't make this harder, snapped something inside me. It was the same thing he used to say whenever Sandra blamed me for something I didn't do. Whenever he stood there, silent, while I was being humiliated or punished for nothing. I stood up. You made it harder the moment you opened your mouth, I said. He frowned, his tone turning bitter. I thought you'd be grateful. After everything I did for you. I laughed. Everything you did for me? You mean the years you spent pretending I didn't exist? Or the part where you replaced me with your perfect little family? His jaw tightened. Don't talk about Sandra and Evan like that. They're still your family. No, I said, stepping closer. You made sure they weren't. The room fell silent again, except for the ticking of the old wall clock. He looked tired, defeated, but not sorry. Never sorry. Just think about it, he muttered as I turned to leave. You owe me that much. I stopped at the door, looked back once, and said, I don't owe you a damn thing. Driving back to Columbus that night felt like shedding a layer of my skin. I should have felt relieved, proud even, for standing up for myself. But instead, I felt this gnawing sense of unfinished business. For years, I had imagined what it would be like to see my father again. I thought maybe I'd get closure, maybe even an apology. Instead, I got a man who was still willing to sacrifice me to save himself. The next morning, I couldn't shake it. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, staring at my phone. There were 3 missed calls from an unknown number, probably him. I didn't pick up. But I did call someone else. Aunt Linda, the only relative who'd ever treated me like I mattered. When she answered, her voice was soft, cautious. Michael, honey, are you all right? Yeah, I said, though it was a lie. Did you know what he did? She sighed. I heard rumors. Evan's been panicking. Your father's in deep, Michael. He's scared. Good, I said flatly. He should be. She hesitated before speaking again. I know he wasn't the father you needed him to be. But he's still your dad. I closed my eyes. No, he's just a man who happened to raise me until something better came along. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, if you walk away now, you'll never see him again. Then maybe that's for the best, I said, and hung up. 2 days later, I got a call from Evan again. This time, his voice was shaky. Michael, the police came by. They're asking questions about the car. Dad said you were driving it that night. My stomach turned.